Southeastern England, year 43 AD, a figure imprinted by the colourful markings of ancient gods stands guard by a wooden fence overlooking a nearby river. His eyes avert their gaze from the small thatched mounds that are the homes of his people onto the horizon ahead, for emerging from a misty haze are vessels draped in the banners marked by the letters SPQR and packed with dozens of heavily armoured soldiers from Europe. A call to arms is made by the guard, which sees his sleepy settlement of the Catavaloni people gather all manner of weaponry and every available fighting-aged male. Stories from generations ago passed down by spoken word told of the legendary Caesar and his great army sailing towards the British coasts. Equipped with this knowledge, the Catavaloni march a small force eastwards down the River Medway to meet with their brazened potential occupiers. A great skirmish erupts between the natives and newly docked Roman legions, so beginning the first clash of these mighty civilizations. Although the indigenous tribesmen fight with valour, their efforts result in a loss and the survivors make a hasty retreat northwards towards the River Thames. Marching in lengthy columns are the forces of General Aulus Plautius, who views himself as the one destined for the conquering of what is to be the new Roman province of Britannia. One by one, tribes are both extinguished by force or by surrender under oaths of loyalty. Shortly after the fighting on the Medway, Roman legions establish a base of operations on marshy ground near the River Thames, which they christen with the name of Londinium. From the great pillars and archways of this newly crafted example of Roman prowess, Plautius marches on the Catavaloni capital of Camulodunum. There they destroy the stronghold of this once dominant British force and rebuild the city in their own image. Soon after, General Plautius marks the inhabitants of northbound wetlands known as the Iceni people as ripe for the next taste of Roman power, but fearing to oppose such an almighty reckoning, their king Prasutagus surrenders before any blood is spilled. And for the next 17 years, the Icenians are granted a degree of autonomy under the Roman state, whilst the conquering continues elsewhere. East Anglia, year 60 AD. As King Prasutagus exhales his last breath, his people mourn greatly the king who brought about a relative peace despite the conquest of their foreign occupiers. The Romans, who dwell in lavish estates and walk on cobbled streets atop the bones of many of their fellow countrymen, care little for the indigenous Britons, but ultimately retain Iceni autonomy during the late king's life. Upon his death, however, a dark fate awaits them. With the bind of autonomy severed, Roman troops march into the Iceni land, removing nobles from their homes and seizing their estates. The wife of Prasutagus and queen of the native land, Boudica, is flogged and bloodied by whips and chains. Those of lesser nobility who stand in the way are imprisoned or slain. Subsequently, the now deeply scarred and ashamed Boudica curses the foreigners and, embroiled by rage, prays for strength from her Celtic deities. Witnessing the dismaying of her people and the scarring of her daughters, the queen rises from the soil flooded with Iceni blood and embarks on her path of vengeance and destruction. Over the following weeks, the joining of Iceni's, surviving Catavalonis and other British tribes such as the Trinovantes marks the beginning of this great war of persecuted Britons against their Roman overlords. Boudicca, pledging to rip the beating heart of Roman pride from its chest, gathers the soldiers of this hate-filled alliance and prepares to march first on Camulodunum and later Londinium. According to Roman historian Cassius Dio, an army as many as 200,000 Britons approached the Roman city. With haste, the alliance crushes the walled defences and pour into the streets of the former Catavaloni capital. The Roman colony is set ablaze, and many in their hundreds are pulled from the great tiled homes that line Camulodunum's cobbled walkways and are butchered in the smoky air. No corner of the city's paths are left without a smearing of red or the lining of human carcasses. Amidst the chaos and devastation, a small garrison of 200 auxiliary troops retreat to a temple dedicated to former Emperor Claudius in the heart of the city, where they make a final stand. The Britons rapidly breach the courtyard and, emitting great war cries, they surround the hopelessly outnumbered soldiers. Under the guise of this remarkable Roman edifice, the troops hold ground for some time but are later annihilated. What remains of Camalodunum is nearly completely destroyed, and Boudicca is granted her first major victory of this new campaign. Elsewhere in Britannia, the current governor Gaius Suetonius Paulinus, whilst on campaign to subdue the Druids of Mona, present-day Anglesey in Wales, hears of the Great Revolt afflicting the east. Struck by the fear of losing Roman control in the area, the governor rapidly marches southwards to subdue Boudicca's great Celtic army. And now, with both forces moving towards the Roman capital of Londinium, the markings of a great clash of societies verges on the horizon.